What's up, everybody? My name's Adam McDormand, and this is Medium Quality. Okay, I'm back, here to talk about progressive rock, both reflecting on my introduction to the genre and also in tribute to all the records that I have in my collection that are prog rock and prog rock adjacent. Now, in my last video, I mentioned how I got interested in progressive rock by way of the great bass players of prog, and just being exposed to all of that great music got me interested in progressive rock, not simply as a means to hear good bass players, but as a way to think about music very, very differently. And in the years after I got that first burnt compilation CD, I got really into Yes. Kind of by accident, actually. My aunt wanted to buy whatever Yes album had Owner of a Lonely Heart on it, and she didn't know which one that was. By the way, it's 90125. And she ended up buying a copy of Close to the Edge on CD. It was that recent Rhino CD remaster from, I think, 2003. She was like, this is not at all what I had expected. You can have it. So I popped it into my Walkman knockoff and plugged it into my car through the tape deck, which in retrospect is no way to listen to that album whatsoever, but I was blown away by that album, even listening to it through the crappy, almost blown car speakers in my old 1983 Oldsmobile Omega. It just had something really special about it. You know, not too long after that, the very first thing I ever bought on Amazon.com was the 3 CD greatest hits collection of Yes. That was the 35th anniversary, and that whetted my appetite until I saw something on the store shelves. I was a very good boy that year, and Santa Claus brought me this for Christmas. In a Word by Yes. This is a 5-disc exploration of the entire musical history of Yes up to the point of its release. And as you can see, it's been well loved. I listened to every single one of these CDs and learned a lot about Yes's diverse sounds. And one of the things that was really awesome about this collection is that it came with this really beautiful booklet that, hi Bill, has this great kind of oral history of Yes that really told the story of the entire band. And it captured my imagination, both as a musical story and the songs themselves. Up until that point, I may not have been able to define what progressive rock was. I still might not be able to define what progressive rock was, but at that point, at that pivotal moment in my life, I became a progressive rock fan. That's probably the only reason that I ended up with this entire massive record collection, is because I wanted to own a Yes record, and one Yes record turned into several Yes records, turned into, well, 2 of these 4x2 IKEA Calyx shelves. God bless my wife for putting up with it. And so here we are. Today I'm going to take a real quick look at a couple of obvious choices for great progressive rock albums. One that might be a little bit off the beaten path, one that's newer, and one of which we might ask, is this progressive rock at all? Now let's start out with what may very well be a very controversial choice for progressive rock album. That is Pink Floyd's The Wall. I recently got this brand new 2016 remaster of this album, and it's really a staple in the progressive rock catalog. There are some places where it is extremely self-indulgent, where it is maybe a little too much, with its double LP length concept story about a musician who's gone off the deep end and wonders why he's even doing it at all and becomes a horrible person, maybe a fascist. I'm not exactly sure. The great stuff on this album is so great, is so iconic. You could come to this album just for the guitar solos alone. David Gilmour just brings in this genre-defining, career-defining performance, both on guitar and with a lot of his vocal work. Love him or hate him, you gotta give these guys credit for doing something incredibly ambitious, both musically and aesthetically. It's an album that really kind of defines the genre for better or worse. Pink Floyd's The Wall. What am I supposed to say about it? You know. Turn this video off and go listen to it. So if The Wall is a prog rock album for the everyman, well then let's take it to the far end of the spectrum and go with King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King. This is not an album for everyone, but it is an album that is very iconic, that is very much a defining album for the progressive rock genre. I recently replaced my beat up old copy of this album that I've had almost since I started collecting records with a fairly new, very high quality reissue. Most of the time when we think of this album, we think of the two songs that bookend it. These massive, iconic prog rock songs, starting with 21st Century Schizoid Man and finishing with The Court of the Crimson King. But the three tracks in between there, don't sleep on those tracks. Even though they are smaller, a little more intimate, a little more down-tempo, they are really, really good. Epitaph, I Talk to the Wind, Moonchild, they're really great songs that fill out this album in a way that perfectly balances those more chaotic, higher tempo, higher energy songs. This album is great and obviously fits into the go-to obvious choice for great progressive rock albums that belong on the shelf. And now it's time to head into uncharted territory, off the beaten path of the progressive rock pantheon, and spend some time with Passport's Cross Collateral. Now, even talking about this on a prog rock video may be playing a little fast and loose with the definition of prog rock. You could rightly identify this as a fusion album. Regardless of that, it has some real progressive rock chops. It is still pop sensible enough that it could be considered rock, and because it pulls from some classical influences and because it has more extended jams, I think it's fair to put this alongside some of the great prog rock albums. But because it is not the go-to, the Yeses, the King Crimsons, the Genesis, and so forth, this is one that you probably would not see show up that often. Passport is a band that is led by Klaus Doldinger, who is an absolute sax machine. I mean, this man really carries this album with some extraordinary saxophone work. Anything that Passport did from 1971 to 1983 is going to be great. And they all have kind of a similar aesthetic, similar color palettes. You'll often see these two eyes peering out at you from the album cover, almost as if Dr. T.J. Eckelberg from the billboard in The Great Gatsby is staring at you, judging you for your sins. He will forgive you if you listen to this album, because it's that good. This might be one that you can pick up fairly inexpensively at your local record shop if you're looking out for it. But keep an eye out for Passport, because it's keeping an eye out for you. And next up is the modern album in our little prog rock showcase, Hand Cannot Erase by Steven Wilson. This is an album from 2015, and it is a beautiful album. I mean, if there's anything that takes the sensibilities of progressive rock and marries them to modern production techniques and writing styles, it is Steven Wilson's work on this album. And it may sound less like a progressive album than something like in our last episode when we looked at Transatlantic, which is trying to recreate the sounds of progressive rock with modern instruments. This is borrowing the sensibilities and really modernizing them. You could make the complaint that progressive rock is cheesy and dated. This is not. Steven Wilson is very much a student of progressive music and pop music and manages to make an album that has dynamics like a progressive rock album, but the listenability, the emotionality of great pop music. There's some songs on here that are absolutely devastating. If you take the time to listen to all four sides of this record and invest yourself into the story that's being told here, it's going to make you feel something. And that simply couldn't happen if this were a cheesy, attempt to recreate Moog sounds in a digital recording environment. And that's not to throw shade on any modern progressive rock bands, but I just don't think anybody does it as well as Steven Wilson. So if you happen to be watching this video and you've never even listened to progressive rock at all, jumping back to recordings from the 1970s might be a bit jarring for you. And if that's the case, then this is actually probably a really good place to start learning about progressive rock. Just a beautiful album, beautifully packaged, great pressing. I can't recommend it enough. It may be Steven Wilson's masterwork. And the last thing that we're going to look at today is a record that we will ask the question of, are you even progressive rock at all? And the answer may be no, but let's talk about it anyways. This is Minus the Bears' Planet of Ice. Minus the Bears is a really difficult band to pin down because their sounds across various albums is so diverse. Their early work was very mathy, very emo influenced, and by the time you get to 2007, they were trying very explicitly to make a progressive album, and including lots of keyboard use, lots of longer extended jams, and just a real sense of lush and big recordings. And of course after this they sort of abandoned that approach altogether and tried to chase a more pop sensible, more dancey kind of sound. And I think they're pretty much successful at whatever type of music that they're trying to make. And so in that regard, I think this is actually a really successful progressive rock album, even as kind of a one-off from this band. This is an album that is thirsty, we'll put it that way. The album's never crass in any way, but it's giving you a wink and a nod and pointing to the bedroom door. Is it prog? I'd like to think so. I'd like to think so. I don't know, what do you think? Hit me in the comments, let me know if I'm totally wrong. Regardless of whether it's prog or not, this is a fantastic album. Sometimes it's kind of hard to come by in vinyl form. I think it has somewhat recently been reissued, but I had to fight to get this one, and it fought back and took a small bite out of my wallet at the time. There we have it. Two obvious choices, one off the beaten path, something new, and something that may not be prog at all. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's gonna do it for us today, guys. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if for some odd reason you're really interested in what we're doing here, there will be a link in the description section below where you can get some pretty cool medium quality merch. Until next time, keep spinning that good stuff. What a time to be alive.